Magic the Gathering is an extremely expensive luxury hobby, at least if you're in it to play competitively, to a varying degree of course. On one hand, we got vintage decks carrying a price tag equivalent of an average person's annual income, but even in the designated budget format Pauper, the average deck still costs in the ballpark of $50 to $90 in paper. You can of course play Magic Arena for free, but building a collection without spending any money takes a lot of time since we're not exactly dealing with the most player-friendly economy on this platform. I personally consider this financial barrier to entry to be the single biggest problem with Magic as a whole, and I truly wish that WotC and Hasbro would make it a priority to make the game as accessible as possible for everyone. Knowing that that's a long shot, I decided to make this tutorial where I teach you what I consider to be the best way to play any paper format for free. In short, the way it works is I'm going to teach you how you can use Moxfield's playtest tool, which in my opinion is easily the best one available, and then capture your screen in Streamlabs and then turn it into a virtual webcam that you can then use over on Spelltable, which, if you're not familiar, is a tool that allows people to play against each other from home by simply streaming their own side of the battlefield, typically with a webcam. This all involves a few steps, so I'll leave timestamps in the description so it'll be a little bit easier for you to navigate through the video. Now let's get started. So first, let's hop on over to moxfield.com, which is a browser-based Magic the Gathering multi-tool with all sorts of awesome features, but for the purpose of this video, we'll mainly focus on the playtesting tool. You're going to need to create an account, so if you don't already have one, creating one is as easy as creating an account on any other website. You just click register up here, fill in your information, they'll send a confirmation link in the email, click it, and you're done. You'll also need a deck, so to add one, click this little plus icon in the top right corner and then press new deck. You'll get this box where you can customize the name of the deck, the format, what folder the deck goes in, if any. If you have a deck list ready, there are also a few options to just import it directly, such as pasting the list in text form, uploading a notepad file, or simply using a URL. If you don't have a deck list ready, just select none and hit create. Now you have this blank list and you're ready to start building your deck by either using the bulk edit feature where you can just start typing your deck list, or by using the search bar. Once you've added a card to your list, you can click these three dots if you're in the visual view, or this arrow if you're in the text view, and you'll get this menu where you can customize the card version and add or remove copies of the card from your list, as well as some other stuff that isn't super relevant right now. So now let's say you've got your deck list ready. I'll be using this Solfim EDH burn deck for demonstration purposes. So if you scroll down a bit, you'll see this sample opening hand and below it a few buttons. Click on playtest and you'll open this playtesting tool. This is essentially a paper Magic simulator, if you will, and what you see represents your side of a game of Magic. I'm not going to do a super in-depth guide explaining everything you can do with this tool for the sake of video length, but I'll quickly cover the basics. First of all, nothing is automated, so you'll have to do everything manually, which might seem a bit overwhelming at first, but is actually rather intuitive once you get your head around it. Here at the bottom you have your hand, which of course consists of 7 cards in the beginning of a game. You can move your cards around easily just by dragging and dropping them around, or you can click these 3 dots on the cards, which lets you access a drop-down menu to perform all sorts of actions specifically associated to the card you're clicking. To the right is your library, graveyard and exile zone, and if you're playtesting a commander deck, you'll also find your command zone here. This big grid here is your battlefield, and this bar above contains things like life total, poison, energy, and even ticket counters. Just like with the cards, there's also a drop menu that contains all sorts of different gameplay actions associated to each of these zones, which is opened by clicking on the name of the zone. And then we got these buttons here in the top right corner of the battlefield, which is a collection of shortcuts to the gameplay actions you'll typically be using most often in a game of Magic. Many of the most important gameplay actions have associated hotkeys, which does take a little bit of time to get used to, but makes the entire experience a lot smoother. If you click one of the drop-down menus, you'll see a letter to the right of some of the actions, which is of course the hotkey assigned to that action. If you're interested in a full overview of all the hotkeys, there'll be a link to that in the description. I think that's going to be enough of an introduction to get you started. I definitely recommend that you explore it a bit more on your own to really familiarize yourself with the tool. So now that you know the basics about Moxfield's playtesting tool, the next thing we need is a way to capture what's going on our screen. We'll be using Streamlabs. First, we'll need to download Streamlabs. This works the same way as downloading pretty much any other program. Click the link in the description to download Streamlabs and then install the program and open it. The black area you see here is your canvas, and it represents what is being captured, which is nothing at the moment. What we need to do is to add a source by pressing this plus icon down here. That'll open this window with a bunch of different capture options. Select the one called Window Capture and hit Add Source. Now you can give the source a name, and we're just gonna call it Moxfield and hit Add Source again. Now you'll see this settings window for the source. Click the first drop-down menu to select what window to capture and select your browser that has Moxfield's playtesting tool open. Now you should see your Moxfield window here on the canvas in Streamlabs. But since broadcasting the cards in your hand is probably a bad idea, we need to make sure they don't appear here on the canvas. Remember, everything that is visible here will be visible to whoever you play against. Luckily, this is super easy to do. First, go back to your browser window and hit F11 to enter full screen if you're using Google Chrome. If you're using a different browser, you'll need to figure out this part yourself. That'll give us a much cleaner look with just Moxfield and none of Chrome's user interface. But we still need to hide the cards in our hand. We'll do so by adding another source. So click the plus icon down here again, and this time select color block and hit Add Source. Again, you can name the source if you want to, but I'll just leave it as is for now. And click Add Source again. Then you'll see this white square in the top left corner of your canvas, and also this settings window from the color block source where you can adjust color, width, and height. You can pick whatever color you like. What I like to do is just using this color picking tool to grab the color of Moxfield's border, as I think that just gives a nice and clean look. Just leave the width and height as is and close the settings window, as we're going to resize and reposition the color block right on the canvas. Simply drag the color block down here to where it covers your hand and use the handles to resize the box. You're going to need to hold down Shift while resizing, as the proportions of the color block are linked by default. This looks pretty good now, but there's one more thing we need to fix. In Moxfield's playtest tool, you'll see a preview like this if you hover your mouse over a card. This is obviously not going to work, so we need to turn this feature off. To do so, click the player button in the top right corner, scroll down and click Hide Card Preview, and it's turned off. Now we're done setting up the area that we're going to broadcast, and we're almost ready to move over on Spelltable. The last thing we need to do here in Streamlabs is turning on the virtual webcam feature. Click on Settings in the bottom left corner and then click on Virtual Webcam. All you need to do here is to install the virtual webcam and then start the virtual webcam. And now it's Spelltable time. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Spelltable is a browser-based tool for playing Magic against each other via webcam, and it's officially powered by WotC themselves. You're also gonna need an account on here, so if you have your Magic Arena account, you can use that same login here on Spelltable, and if you don't, just register one. Again, it's as easy as on any other website. Once you're logged in, you'll see this lobby where you can either join somebody else's game or create your own. I'll just create one for demonstration purposes, but the webcam part works exactly the same way if you join somebody else's game. Click here to create a game. Choose a name, what format you're playing, and whether or not you want to make the game public. You can also write a description if you want, but I'll leave this blank for now. Then scroll down and press Create. That'll bring you here where you can customize your video and audio settings before entering the actual game. Now press this gear icon in the bottom right corner, and then under Camera Source you should be able to see an option called Streamlabs Desktop Virtual Webcam. Select it and voila! You are now streaming Moxfield's playtesting tool instead of your actual webcam, and you're good to go. So when you press Join Now, you arrive at the final destination where the actual game takes place, and it looks slightly different depending on whether you're playing 1v1 or multiplayer. Spelltable also have a few cool features in addition to just the webcam sharing that I'll just briefly cover. So if you hover your mouse to the left, you'll see this bar where you'll find functions like layout customization, player invite, general settings, and even things like die rolls and coin flips. So moving to the bar above your webcam, if you're playing Commander, you can click here to add your commander, which makes it so that you'll get a card image preview if you hover over the name. This is also where you track things like poison counters and commander damage. You can also track your life total up here, which I recommend doing instead of doing it in Moxfield, just so it's gonna be in the same place as everyone else's life total. And one of the coolest features in Spelltable is its card identification tool. Sometimes it can be difficult to read the cards, especially in a game of Commander, but if you click on a card in a player's video, Spelltable will bring up the actual card image in the card drawer over here on the right. But sometimes it doesn't work perfectly, usually if somebody has poor video quality, so you can also just search up a card manually to see the card image over here. I think that's gonna be be enough information to get you started here in Spelltable as well, so now the only thing left to do is to actually get started playtesting. While this method is really useful for playtesting and casual play, by no means does it replace an actual game of paper magic. There are a number of things that can be a bit awkward if you compare the two. The first one is playing cards that in some way requires you to do things with your opponent's cards or vice versa. That could be cards like Leyline Binding, for example, which is probably going to be manageable in a 1v1 game, but if you enjoy playing spicy commanders like Blim Comedic Genius, for example, you're likely going to have a tough time keeping track of what permanents you donated to who. There are a lot more examples like these that could be mentioned here, but for the sake of wrapping up this video soon, I'll let you figure that out yourself. I want to say that this is really more of a Spelltable problem than it is a Moxfield one. Another problem is that in some scenarios, it can be difficult to manage what to show your opponent and what not to. A simple example could just be something like scrying or surveilling. With the setup I've taught you in this video, your opponents will be able to see the cards you're viewing over here on the right, which they're of course not supposed to. My best solution is probably just asking your opponents not to look if it's casual play, which I think is going to be the case the majority of time since this is meant to be used for like playtesting and casual play. What you can do though is adding another color block in Streamlabs that covers this area over here that you can toggle on and off whenever you need to hide this area by clicking this eye icon down here in the sources. This is quite a clunky solution since you're already alternating between Moxfield and Spelltable, and adding a third window is not exactly going to result in a smooth gameplay experience, but it is an option. The last issue I'll touch on before wrapping up is cheating. I've heard people say that if you set up things the right way, it's really easy to cheat with this method, and I don't really know how to respond to this critique other than don't cheat, especially not in a casual game of Commander with strangers on the internet. And also, I don't really see how cheating just using a webcam isn't approximately like the easiest thing in the world. So yeah, I don't really buy this one, and seriously, just don't cheat. So that's my take on the best way to play Magic the Gathering across formats for free, so you can try your ideas in practice before spending money or wildcards on acquiring the cards you need. I hope you found the video useful and that you'll enjoy many hours of fun playtesting in the future, and also that it maybe helps you save just a little bit of money as well. If you think that the Solfim burn deck that was used demonstrating this method looked interesting, I actually made a video where I break down a slightly outdated version of that deck, so feel free to check that one out. Thank you kindly for the view, happy playtesting, and until next time.